Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Tune In with TEFL. I'm Jess.
And I'm Tara.
So today we're going to talk about something we hear all the time from people who are thinking about teaching abroad, and it's basically, I'd love to do it, but I've never thought before.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things that holds people back. They think, why would a school hire me if I've never been a teacher before?
Yeah, exactly. Or they think that they need an education degree or that they need to have worked in a school before, but actually so many TEFL teachers, they start out with absolutely no experience.
Exactly. So Jess, if someone's listening to this now and they have zero teaching experience, they've never stood in a classroom in their life, can they genuinely go and teach English abroad?
Yeah, absolutely. So for many entry-level TEFL positions, absolutely. Obviously, requirements vary depending on the country and the school, but having no previous experience doesn't automatically rule you out. So I think that's what we really want to get into today, what you actually need to get started, how you can prepare yourself, and what are those first few weeks of teaching really like.
Yeah, absolutely, because I imagine there's a big difference between completing your course at home and then suddenly thinking, wow, okay, now I need to actually teach a class.
Yeah, completely. I think everyone has that moment.
Okay, so let's say someone came to you tomorrow and said, Jess, I want to teach abroad, I've got no experience, what do I do? Where would you tell them to start?
Yeah, I think honestly the first thing I'd say is don't panic about the experience side of things. Everyone has to start somewhere. I'd probably start by thinking, okay, where you actually want to teach, because that's going to determine a lot of your next steps. Different countries have different visa requirements. Some countries may require a bachelor's degree, for example, and individual schools can have their own hiring criteria as well. So do a little bit of research into it, where you'd like to go, and then obviously if you want to look at getting TEFL qualified, of course.
Absolutely. So having a TEFL qualification is definitely even more important for someone who hasn't taught before.
Definitely, because where you're actually learning the foundations of teaching, things like how to structure a lesson, managing a classroom, how to teach grammar or vocabulary, and how to get your students actually using and speaking English in the classroom. You're not expected to know how to do all of that just because you can speak English.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think sometimes a lot of people think, well, I speak English, so I must be able to teach it.
Yeah, and then someone asks, to explain a particular grammar rule, like the present perfect. How does that work?
Exactly, and you're questioning everything you've ever learned about English.
Literally. So that's why the training is so important. It's about learning how to teach rather than simply knowing how to speak it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So if someone has no experience and they're looking at all the different TEFL courses that we have available, what should they actually be looking for?
Yeah, great question. It really depends on your goals. So you have the recognised 120-hour TEFL course, which gives you the solid foundation, very suitable for many entry-level teaching jobs. But then you have more advanced options, so like our level 5 TEFL diploma, which goes into more depth and can help you stand out, particularly when you're applying for more competitive positions.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also have a hybrid teaching practice course, which could be helpful for some people with no experience, because you get to do it over 2 days with a live tutor, and you can put that down in your CV then that you have this live teaching practice as well. So that's another great thing for people to do.
Absolutely, that's worth mentioning as well. It's a fantastic course. A really fast track way to get a bit of experience under your belt as well. I think about, whether you want to teach, for a few months, or whether you're hoping to move abroad long term, or maybe you might want to teach online as well. Again, if you already have a particular country in mind, check those requirements before making any decisions.
Yeah, absolutely, because getting TEFL qualified is one part of it, but then you have to bring in things like visas and degree requirements, and these really depend on what country you're planning to go to.
Exactly. There's no single set of requirements that applies to every country in the world, so you have to do your research on that.
And something else I think people really worry about is their CV. They think, okay, I've never taught before, so what do I actually put on there?
Yeah, great question. And that's where I'd say people really, really underestimate the experience they already have. You might not have your typical formal teaching experience, but think about all the other, transferable skills you've developed from other jobs or just life in general. Maybe you've worked in hospitality, customer service, so you're comfortable communicating with lots of different people. Maybe you've worked with kids before, you trained up someone new at work, or even just given presentations. Things like just being organised, patient, adaptable, able to sort of think on your feet are all really useful skills as well for teaching.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose when you're teaching abroad, these kind of skills become even more important because you're not just starting a new job, you're adapting to a new country, a completely different culture and way of life.
Absolutely. And those things aren't always going to go exactly to plan either, to be honest with you. That applies to living abroad, but it definitely applies to the classroom as well.
Yeah, definitely. So that's why I think being adaptable is one of the biggest and most important skills that you can have as a teacher.
100%. You could have what you think is the perfect lesson plan, and then you walk into the classroom and you realise within 5 minutes that it's just not working with that particular group. And you have to be able to think to yourself, okay, let's just try something new. That ability comes with experience, but having those transferable skills I mentioned already gives you a really good foundation.
Definitely. And I think a lot of people listening will be thinking about maybe their first class. So what would you do if you move halfway across the world, you walk into your first classroom and your mind just goes blank? What do you do?
Yeah, I think every teacher thinks about this at some point. And honestly, look, your first lesson might not be amazing, and that's okay. That's the point. I think people, they put so much stress on themselves to be this like incredible teacher from day one, but you're still just learning. You might plan an activity that you think will be perfect. It'll take 20 minutes. That's perfect for your lesson plan. But then it's actually over in 5 minutes. You have some really smart students in there. You might ask the class a question or nobody says anything. You get absolute silence. You might give instructions and realise halfway through that nobody has any idea what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I imagine things like that feel absolutely terrifying the first time that it happens.
Yeah, it can, but then you figure it out, because the next time then you give those instructions, you explain them a bit differently. The next time you plan that activity, you have a backup activity ready to go. Every lesson teaches you something about how to become a better teacher next time.
Exactly, so your first lesson is not supposed to be perfect.
Not at all, and neither is your 10th lesson. The teachers who look completely confident and natural in the classroom didn't start out that way. They've just had time to practice and figure out what works for them.
Absolutely.
So if you're listening to this and thinking, I'd love to teach abroad, but I've absolutely no experience, hopefully we've made you feel a little bit better, and it's felt a little more achievable.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just want to remind you that you don't already have to be a teacher before you start exploring TEFL. Most people start as a complete beginner.
As we were saying, research where you want to go, find out what qualifications and visa requirements you'll need. Get your TEFL qualification, of course, from us. Build a little bit of practical experience if you can. And remember that you probably already have a lot of transferable skills that will help you along on your journey.
And the most important thing is don't put too much pressure on yourself and don't expect yourself to be perfect on the first day.
Exactly. Every teacher you've ever met had to teach their first lesson at some point. You just have to start somewhere. And that first lesson can end up being the beginning of a few months abroad.
Or even years of travelling.
Yeah, or even a completely new career you've never expected.
Exactly.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Tune In With TEFL.
We really hope this has given you a little bit more confidence if teaching abroad is something that you've been thinking about.
And if you know someone who keeps saying, I'd love to teach abroad, but I've never thought before, send them this episode.
And as always, if there's any topic you'd like us to chat about next, we'd love to hear your ideas.
Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. And again, thanks for tuning in.
Bye everyone.
Bye guys.